Roosters, back with you after a couple of losses. One a horrific one. The gather-round defeat to the Cats wasn't the most of deflating losses, but the way in which we pitted out in the second half was a little bit disappointing after showing some great signs in the first, Drew Jones. So much to talk about across those 2 weeks, but we're going to take a couple of different tangents on the Nest podcast today, maybe deep dive into a couple of selection issues and some other big talking points around the club. How are you, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, very good. I think, we've talked about our fair share of losses over the last few years, so we can park that for now. I think it would be fair to say that we've been pretty below par the last couple of weeks. I think the reaction to the Sydney loss might have been a little over the top from some, given they had the week off and our injuries. But, going into the season, we lost to Gold Coast, probably expected. Lost to Geelong, probably expected. Lost to the Swans, pretty much expected. So I don't think we haven't exactly fallen in a heap, have we?
No, I just had this feeling that the Sydney loss, as shambolic as it was and as bad as it was, would be a blip on the radar. That's still my feeling. Sometimes those things just happen where they're a team that just punishes you severely when they're on, especially us. They had the week off, as you say. They'd come off a loss against Hawthorn, so they were smarting. We were also on their radar, having won 2 in a row. They were just so fired up, you could tell. We were a little bit off. We actually were in the game in terms of inside 50s and that early on, but, tough chances, didn't quite nail them, and then we fall in a heap. So it's not acceptable, of course. We can't have those losses anymore. But I just get the feeling it might be a blip on the radar for many a week, at least, until maybe the end of the season we might have a couple of bad ones when the kids are tired. But I just get that feeling, and I hope I'm right. And the weekend against Geelong gave us some sort of belief that, we will respond and turn up to play and compete at the very least more often than not.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I just think the Swans thing was a perfect storm. I think Cal Mills even said after the game, he's like, it was so great having that break. We got to train some stuff that we weren't doing that well. We came off a 6-day break. Cal. Yeah, 6-day break with injuries, come back home. We'd lost 17 of our last 20 to the Swans. They just beat up on us for whatever reason. There was times where, they were moving the ball and it was just clear that we were just not prepared for that magnitude of opponents. So anyway, let's not get bogged down too much in that. I think there were some good signs against Geelong, and we're 2-3. We've beaten a couple of sides who, if we're going to potentially be muscling past them in terms of our rebuild, that's a great result. So I think 2-3, we take stock ahead of a Western Derby. We're in not a bad spot. And then something that's on your radar is John Worsfold saying they think, the club believes, that a flag by the end of this decade is feasible.
Yeah, the West Australian did a good deep dive on this. Wish is saying, West Coast will win a flag by 2030. That's the belief. Firstly, love that. Love that they've got a target. Love that they've got a bullet on the board and they're going, that's our aim. That's fantastic. And I guess the question is why we are bullish in our belief that's or happy that the club has got that target. How achievable is it? Can we actually look at winning a flag in the next 4 seasons from next year? I just sort of started thinking about it in great detail and just pondered if it was the case. Now, the reason why John Worsfold believes this is that West Coast have always won a flag within every 12-year period. So 94 to 06, 06 to 2018, then 18 rolls into 2030. That gives you a lot of belief, right? Is that still the way of it with the way in which this list has been compiled for you and the manner in which we may be able to accelerate our development, recruit a couple of big stars in the next year or two? Do you have that feeling that by 2030 it can be done?
I do think that we'll be competing in 2030. So you've got to get yourself to somewhere near the start line, right? And in terms of competing for a flag. In 2018, we weren't the best team for the entire year, but we won the flag. And so that was a great example of getting hot at the right time and playing great footy at the end of the season, stars aligning, even without, two of our most important or three of our most important players will still able to win the flag. So, if we get ourselves to the point where we're winning, our home ground is a fortress, we're winning most of those games, then we're going on the road and we're stealing games and we're getting ourselves into top 6, top 4 contention, and then everything, anything can happen from there. So there's a couple of things that have to happen in that time. We've got to land a big fish or two, and there's plenty of West Australians who are going to be targets for us over the next few years. But I think you'll agree with me here, Garby. So, Warner shapes as one who you can add immediate quality to the midfield and an experienced body who knows how to win and has done it with the Swans. And then we need to have a star ruckman by that time, so that we sort of need Cooper Duff-Tytler to become a gun ruck. And if that doesn't happen, then we have to try to recruit one, because currently, our current ruck situation outside of CDT isn't going to take us to a flag in 2030. And then we need a genuine, proper key defender who is going to be, stand up in a prelim final and shut down whoever we're playing. Because once you get to September, the star forwards are there. So, we can't have a leaky defence. I mean, you're not going to get to that point with it, but you certainly can't win it. So, key defence, ruck needs to be sorted out, and we need a star midfield. I know that sounds like, you're covering every line, but that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, we'll need a defensive marshal, someone who really takes charge. We had Gov and Barras. You need two of them, really. You look at Hawthorn now and you watch their back line and the way in which they move, and their recruitment of Battle and Barras, that was just huge. It was like, all right, we get those two in alongside of Sicily, and then you can just cover off every base. We had that with Gov, Barras and Shannon Hearn. But they all just moved in sync, and then you chuck in a couple of other good ones around them, excuse me, and they can elevate because of those players that are there. Harry Edwards can be, I think, one of those players, potentially, but he probably needs a big personality around him down back. Tyler Young's 27 already. There's no reason why he can't be a player in that back line, but is he going to be the main option? Probably not. So, yeah, that's a player that we really need to target moving forward, a dominant key defender that can partner up with Harry Edwards if he gets his concussion issue under control. Tyler Young can be a player there. We've got Ruben there as well, but we'd love Ruben to play on someone just a little bit shorter. He shouldn't have to play on the big man every week. And then we've really got a back line that can withstand threats in the biggest games of all. So that's definitely a position, and the ruck one's obvious too. So, yeah, I think when you look at, if you keep the quartet of Harley, Dersma, Shanahan and CDT out of the clutches of Victorian sides, because they will come again for them, don't worry about that. We keep them happy. We keep them in West Coast colours. The other youngsters all develop around them, and a couple are, jump up as we've discussed. And then you continue to recruit more and bring in a couple of others around them. We've got enough top-end talent. I don't think we need, outside of a big backman and a big ruck, as you say, any more superstars, because the four of them are there. And there'll be a couple others that will jump up, but there might just be another, a couple more pieces inside the midfield that will be very handy to add. So, yeah, I think it's achievable. 4 or 5 years, when you look at how rapidly Dersma and Reid and Shanahan, et cetera, will develop. For sure. So that's an exciting thing to get your head around. We can now actually get our minds around a target, and it may come a little bit earlier than that. Who's to say that we don't play in big finals in, 2028 or 2029? So I like having that vision in our minds of a real target.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? So when I'm projecting ahead, I can't help but already start thinking about our next draft. So we're going to have a pick in the top 4. Once Tassie comes in, it starts to get a little complex. So I feel like this year's big for us. And the club has already shown we're willing to bid on Harry Dean with such a high pick. So that they're aware of the fact that we need a key defender.
Yeah, yeah.
And will one present themselves this year in the draft, or is this the time to take, the inside bull or the next, that other midfielder that we're sort of crying out for to go along with Harley Reid and Willem Dersma, because we don't know where Dersma's going to ultimately end up because he is so versatile. But let's just sort of map this out. If you don't get your defender with the high pick, then you're not going to get a superstar mid with the next one. So it's really interesting the way that we set up from here. But yeah, the Warner piece sort of sits there. I mean, Trent Rivers not getting a game at Melbourne. Can he be someone? He's not going to be, a cornerstone of a premiership, but it's like you got to keep getting these guys, right? Like that's how you build a premiership side. We did it with Stenglein in the build up to 06, and there's plenty.
Jack Redden.
Yeah, Redden, a great example. Comes in and plays a tremendous role in your midfield. There's always going to be pieces that you bring in from the outside, and we're building that right now. But it's exciting. It's exciting that we can actually think about it and talk about it, because we haven't really been able to for the best part of 3 years.
No, because the last couple of years it's been all right. Well, what young talent can we get? Where are we going to be in the drafts? Which players are we going to move off? What picks are we going to bring in? That's been the talk, right? Now we've actually got it. We can say, all right, when are they going to be ready to win us big finals? Oh, yeah, okay. By 2030, your flag, okay, I can see that. So now you've got that vision in your mind as a West Coast fan.
Well, it's in my head, Garby. If Jed Walter presented himself, Ben King re-signs at Gold Coast, Walter's theoretically on the market. Would you say he's a West Coast fan as a kid, all that stuff? Would you go after him and think, okay, we can move Shanahan back if we need to, we can make this all work, or would that be a waste?
Excuse me. The Jed Walter Georgiades talk I find interesting, because I think you could put Georgiades in that bracket as well. Bit older, yes. I don't know if he's a West Coast fan or not, but Walter was. I think you can make it work for a few reasons. Yes, you can play Shanahan back and you can move him around. Duff Tytler probably becomes a ruck. Archer Reed can play a lot of second ruck, and one of them is going to go. Now, this probably flows into the next point you want to talk about. Bailey Williams is a free agent at the end of the season. So Bailey Williams goes, that forces you to move one of those players into more of a ruck role. CDT probably goes there a bit more, which is going to happen anyway. Archer Reed might have to spend a bit more time there too. So that does free up an option up forward. So, yes, I think I'm more inclined to go for it than not. I can see the reservations because we are stacked in that area, and you don't want to give up too much when you've got a lot of options in that part of the field as well. But I think some pieces will move around. And the Bailey Williams one, Drew, is really interesting because he was fantastic against the Cats. He looks like he's better suited to these ruck rules, obviously, than Flynn is. Pretty sure it stays the same ahead of the Freo clash this week. Bailey Williams, the number one ruck, and Flynn out of the side. I just wonder if that changes everything around Bailey Williams, which we didn't necessarily see coming. I had his paper stamped. He just leaves at the end of the season as a free agent. Now the West Coast might, if he really continues his form from the Cats game, keep him on the books. And then, what does that mean in terms of recruiting another forward? I don't know, but that's going to be an interesting part of it all.
Yeah, so Williams was really good. I think, he was up against Mitch Edwards, so I think we need to sort of keep that in perspective. It was also at Norwood, which is a smaller ground, which probably suits rucks in terms of like stats. It's like statistically his game looks really good on paper, and I think he played well. I just think let's have another conversation about Bailey after the Luke Jackson, Mason Cox matchup on Sunday, which is going to be a massive test for him. It's interesting now because there are some reports that Bailey Williams is on a very large wage. I don't know if you saw that. Sort of up towards the up towards the 900 mark. I don't think there's
because it was back-ended.
Yeah, I don't think we should be re-signing him on anywhere near that kind of money. So that would be a consideration. Like if he was hoping to sort of keep the salaries fairly consistent, I think that's not an option for us. That seems like money it could be better spent elsewhere. Ultimately, Duff Tytler is I'm sure, we're planning for him to be our future number one ruck. So I don't think we need to invest a huge amount of money in in players that aren't going to be that for us going forward. I've got a soft spot for Bailey Williams, and I know you do too. There's something about the big tough guy from Frankston who isn't the most talented footballer of all time, but like there's never been a time where I've looked at him and think like he's not trying his guts out for West Coast. Lays tackles, chases, does everything. Contests, take marks.
Yeah,
so I like him. I like him at the club.
The other thing is with him, he's been forced to get a lot of games into him as the number one ruck because of the injuries. Like Nick Nat doesn't get on the field for a couple of seasons. Bailey Williams plays number one ruck. You can look it up, Drewy. I can't do it right now. He'd be around 100 games. And he played so many of them before he was ready to be a number one ruck. So he's actually done the work. And he's far advanced compared to many other rucks of his age in terms of getting those games in. Now, is he a pure number one ruck? Well, probably not. I think his best position is a second ruck resting forward. And I think he could be very valuable for a number of teams. I think many clubs will go for him, especially with these new ruck rules and the 5 on the bench where you can carry an extra tall player if West Coast decide not to sign him. So it's a really interesting one to map out over the next little while, especially if they lose faith with Flynn and they can see that CDT's still got another year or two to develop before he becomes the number one ruck. Do you try and keep Bailey Williams on the books? But they might think, well, he just can't play the number one ruck role, even though he's got something there. So he's just in that same bracket then as Archer Reed and CDT, and that doesn't really help us. So it's this really interesting situation that we're in. It'd be solved if Matt Flynn was playing like the number one ruck, right? And then he can just compete for that second ruck forward role. But Flinny's just not. And unfortunately, I think the new ruck roles have cost him, similar to a Kieran Briggs and a couple of other rucks around the competition, like Riley O'Brien, exactly the same. The bigger bodies who aren't as athletic just struggle with the new ball up rule.
Yeah, you're better off having a 19-year-old who can leap than a 28-year-old who's done 10 pre-seasons and who's big and tough. But for the majority of the history of Aussie rules football, that's been a great ruckman that you've wanted to have on your team. Certainly one at least in your squad. But yeah, unfortunately, it's like Flynn might play another 10 or 12 games this year, but he's just not going to be able to compete with the best rucks with the way that everything's set up at the moment. I loved having the different look of Bailey in the team, and I can't wait to see how he goes on Sunday, and I hope he goes really well. But he is right now really well suited to a team that doesn't have a huge amount of tall stocks in their forward line but has a good first ruck and just needs a second ruck who can play 55% game time, bit of forward, bit of ruck and do his thing. Maybe that's not West Coast because we have so many good tall forward stocks.
Yeah. It'd be a shame if we let him go after the amount of footy he's played for what was a very young key position player, but it might be the way of it. It's just in an interesting spot at the moment. But, yeah, looking forward to watching him play the rest of the season. And you know what? He might end up being the number one ruck. Maybe the rules just suit him and he actually develops into that kind of player. Seems unlikely from this spot, but, hey, it might just happen. That is the ruck situation changing across the competition. So what other changes do you foresee for the Freo game? It's going to be tough. I think we can compete with them, but it's going to be very hard to beat them, of course. They're a genuine flag contender right now. The Waffle Eagles had a win, so that's encouraging. Tom Cole had a great game. I could see him potentially coming in, considering his experience. Yohan Murdoch will come back. The other change I would like to see, I'd like to see Bazzo in for Brock. If we go with another tall defender, they might take out Brock and bring in Cole and move things around a little bit so we're not as tall. Because someone can take Tracy and Amos is not that massive tall forward. But I'd like to see if they're going to go with the key defenders moving forward. I'd like to see Bazzo in for Brock. I'm not a Brock believer. I know he's a good distributor. I just don't think he's tough enough to hold down a key position spot. And Bazzo had a really good game in the Waffle. Give him a go for mine.
Yeah, I'm not a Brock guy. The question is how do we cover all of the Freo tall forwards? So what do the matchups look like? Amos, you can get away with someone a bit smaller, as you say, but then you've still got tall forwards coming out of the wazoo with Voss and Tracy and then Cox floating through there. Like we're a defender short I think, to cover everyone. So Young does a job. Tracy's like, it's going to be hard to stop him. Like, what's the right matchup for Jimby? Is it Voss?
Feels like Voss for Jimby, yeah.
And so then who's the Amos matchup?
If Young's fit, I think he missed out on training today, but it feels like Young would work well on Amos. And then if Edwards not going to come back, is he?
No, Edwards is not playing.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not playing. So I saw him training in a helmet today, which is interesting. Maybe that's the way forward for him, but he won't be back this week. Then, yeah, you're probably one short. I can actually see Jinby playing on Tracy because there's no one else to play on him. So Ruben has to. And then Young probably plays on Amos.
Ridiculous.
And then someone has to play a bit taller on Voss. And they just have to try and do that job. But yes, I think it has to be Jimby on Tracy, Young on Amos if he plays, and then maybe Brock or Bazzo stays in the team and plays on one of the other talls.
Yeah, I mean, Shanahan should start forward, but there's a world where he has to go back and play on someone.
The thing with Shanahan, when you ask him to go back, you ask him to be man on man or a loose man. They're two different things.
Well, we started the year, he's been the loose man, but I'm suggesting it's possible we'll have to send him back as a backman.
Yeah. And play one-on-one and then just try and zone off when you can.
So would you make a change with Archer Reid this week? He's had moments this year, but but his last couple of games have been very quiet.
Yeah. I feel like there's probably room for a change there. And Jack Williams probably deserves a go off the back of his waffle form too. He had a great game. And maybe you freshen it up. And Jack Williams, let's not forget, it's not just the game on the weekend. He's a different proposition fitness-wise as well. So he's done the work. It feels like the time to reward him. And I think you could make that move. And some people have said CDT maybe has a rest as well. I'd like to see him play in a big game like this because I think he'd relish it, being that kind of prospect. But, I could see Jack Williams for Archer Reid. I wouldn't have an issue with that.
I wouldn't do CDT rest this week.
No, maybe in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, I want to see him. I would want to unleash him against Jackson and give him a go, give him a chance.
Yeah.
And
we'll throw in that challenge. He's the unicorn. You're the unicorn elect. We'll go and shut him down.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to. We shouldn't be shying away from him playing his first derby. Like, what if he kicks 3 or takes a big mark, has a big moment? Like, let's not take that away from him on a big stage. No need for that.
No, CDT plays for me. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yep.
Yeah, I'm excited that Murdoch's back. It's funny how he said he set his goal, even though he was told he'd be out for 4 weeks, was to come back for gather round, like just the mentality that he has, which we absolutely love. But I think his return is so timely. I know he has played a lot as sort of the high half forward coming up to stoppage, but I think losing Dev Rob, who's been so responsible around the ball, I think it makes a lot of sense that Milan gets extra CBAs this week. Obviously we get Yo back, and Kelly's been really good the last few weeks. In fact, the whole season since he's come in. But just an extra couple of mature bodies, I think, is going to be so important this week.
Yeah, it's such a shame about Dev Robertson. It's just shite news. Been such a good recruit. This is that 1 week and then cops the ACL. He's the one who jumped out, right? So we looked at the 3, McRae, Schomburg, Robertson. We know who's going to be the one that jumps out of the box. Robertson has been that player. Schomburg's done okay, but his spot in the team isn't guaranteed. And McRae apparently is, battling in the waffle a bit to prove himself. So he has been the one, and then he's the one that goes down. A player we could ill afford to lose because of that big body that is given us, which has really helped a lot. So it's funny. A mate messaged me after the game and said, Minnie looks really flat in his presser, having just watched it. And I was, all right, that's interesting. I'll watch it back. And I went, oh, yeah, he does look a bit flat. Maybe it was the second half fade out. Did he have a disagreement with the player in the rooms after the game? And then you find out the Dev Robertson news and you go, that's it. He knew that it was an ACL. And he looked really flat as a result.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I really tried to get a gauge on had happened, because when I saw the incident, I was like, oh, please don't be an ACL. It had that look. And then I was told that it's likely a medial. And so I was a bit surprised when that news came through about the ACL. But yeah, I was so flat. I just put my phone down and didn't touch it for the rest of the night. I just had to distance myself from it. I just feel for him. Like, I applaud him for wanting to stay at Brisbane and fight for a spot when they were clearly on their way to competing and winning flags. And he was not given an easy run when two Ashcrofts, Jasper Fletcher and Sam Marshall come through the door via father, sons and academies in a spot that he's competing for. But he turned up and played good VFL footy and then came into the team and played a role when he could. And he should have come to West Coast at the end of that previous contract, but he played in those finals, and then his partner had a medical episode at the Best and Fairest, and someone like a Brisbane Lions staffer jumped in and helped her, and he felt indebted to the club, and it was just this strange, all these circumstances just all came together and he re-signs. But it was just so good to see him. It's like, here's your role. We trust you. We want you to be a starting best 23 AFL player. And that just gets taken away from him, like, after all this time. I just find that, like, footy can just be so unfair. And, like, we just seem to, West Coast seem to just cop these hits, and it just frustrates me.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at our injury list the other day and I went, hey, it's not that bad. Like, everyone's got injuries. Ours is kind of middle of the rung now. So who's out? Robertson for the season, Newton for the season, but he's not a guaranteed best 23. Edwards for a little bit. Who else? Starcevic. So it's kind of like 4 players, all right? You know, that's pretty much par for the course. You kind of got to accept that now that Yo and Murdoch are back. So hopefully Yo stays fit. It's okay, our injury position, but it could be better. And the season-long injuries to Newton and Robertson hurt because they impressed early on. Owies, does he stay in for you, Drew? He'd be lucky to, I think.
I'd be happy for us to go back to champion. Yeah,
it's just
not
working out.
It's just not that good.
No, it doesn't feel like his AFL standard, unfortunately. I admire his professionalism so much. He wants it so bad. He's working so hard. You can see with training clips that he's encouraging and he's a good personality, but he's just not producing. And, we're not trying to have a real dig here. We're not trying to be keyboard warriors. He would admit that, I'm sure, when he's reflecting on his impact at West Coast so far. And there were some expectations, Drew, of what he could deliver. And it's just falling way short. He's got another year to go on his contract. Like, in terms of players that have come in the past via trades, it's up there with one of the most disappointing ones in terms of what we thought he might be able to provide and what he has actually delivered. I went back and had a look through, and like in 2000 we brought in Colica, Miranda, Harding and Pryor. Miranda did pretty well, and Colico came second in the Best and Fairest, but Harding and Pryor, didn't really do much. David Sirakowski's one that comes to mind. He was actually part of the Fraser Gehrig trade, and we got pick 18 in that trade. That worked out wonderfully because Daniel Kerr was selected with pick 18.
Nice.
But Sirakowski we thought might be able to be a good player for us, but didn't really do much.
Well,
Petrevsky-Seton, we had some expectations. Yeah. That's true, but he didn't do much. He wasn't looking good prior to that either, and then gets injured and given the injury out. Petrevsky-Seton, we thought might be able to rediscover his potential. Didn't at all. Brockman is now falling short. He could be gone at the end of the season, the way things are tracking. He's got the talent, but shown glimpses. But always I thought would not be a star, but would just be a handy, solid contributor week in, week out to help the next generation come through. And unfortunately, it feels like he's lucky to get games, and I hope that we look back and he can just alter that narrative a bit and he can find a way to contribute. But right now it's looking like, well, how do you let him stay on the list for next season as it stands?
Yeah, so he's not a good shot for goal, and he doesn't naturally accumulate disposals. So he can run around and put pressure on and lay tackles, but he so often turns the ball over. It's
doesn't get enough of it. It just doesn't get enough of the ball.
No, his stats are low, but he kicked 30 in a season for Carlton, and that was reason enough for us to look at that and go, oh, man, like he's capable. But, he's playing in a team that was competing for finals, went to a prelim. He had Curnow and Mackay bringing the ball to ground. It's a different kettle of fish. But he just hasn't even... You don't get to an end of a game and go, geez, he put in a great shift today, and he's a bit untidy, but he's lovable. No, he hasn't reached that point either.
Yeah, like he's made 5 tackles. Like, look at the pressure. Like, he's just not, unfortunately, doing that. And those small forwards, as you know, are so important in the game now. Look at how Ginnivan and Watson have completely transformed Hawthorn. Completely transformed them, those 2 players. They're arguably just about their most important. Like, you need them. And Murdoch and Newton made a big impact early in the season for us with their chasing and tackling. And Murdoch was getting the ball as well, Newton not so much, but you just see him bob up in little patches and lay a big tackle or a big smother or a big chase, and you think, that has an impact on the rest of the team and their ability to set up the ground and so on. And always was brought in for that reason, and unfortunately he just hasn't been able to deliver.
No, if you want to play a front half game in the AFL, you've got to have guys who are quick, who can lay tackles, who can pressure, who can lock the ball in. And, we're not able to do that.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a problem position for us. And
massive.
Murdoch has been able to fill it a bit. And Newton was doing a job without being, someone you'd bet on being there long term. It's a shame that he's out. All right, Mally Champion, can you really step up? Can you do it? He's going to get chances this season. Hopefully he can. Hopefully Tyler Williams can be that player moving forward as well. But it'd be nice if always was delivering on that. So how do you feel about Fremantle, mate? How do you see it going?
Well, I just think they're a great team. So they're also, they're very professional. Like, that's always the sense I've got in Western Derbies in recent times. Apart from the one out of the box where Harley Reid went nuts, they've just put us away, put us down. Their midfielders always seem to dominate against us, particularly Sarong. Be nice to see us try and shut him out of the game. And then, their tall forwards are sensational. So, got to start at the source. We need Kelly, we need Yeo, we need Reid, who's been tagged the last few weeks and hasn't dealt with it overly well. We need big games from our mids to cut off that supply. For the most part, our pressure rating for the whole season, take out the Sydney game, has been good, and we'll need that to keep the game competitive. Everything has to be dialed up to 100, if not beyond.
Yeah, we should have it in a derby. I agree. They've matured in so many different areas. They've got other players jumping up like Murphy Reid, and Shea Bolton's playing really good football. So they've got others that are helping out on Sarong and Brayshaw. They're multi-layered now, Fremantle. But they don't necessarily put you away. So if we can hang in there or maybe get a little jump, maybe sometimes they lack the ability to punish you. And hopefully we can take advantage of that or just blitz them like we did in that derby a couple of years ago. Yep. Looking forward to it, mate. I think we'll be competitive, but it might be too much for us. Good to talk about plenty of issues as we build up to the derby on Sunday night, local time.
Yeah, mate, and enjoy the catch-up. Hopefully we go well. Good luck with the call for the Sydney derby Friday night. Let's catch up soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Nesters.